One of my controversial opinions is that Concorde killed supersonic flight.
Let's talk about a sonic boom and what it is.
Yeah, we can't fly supersonic and we can't land on the moon. America responded trying to protect Boeing by banning supersonic flight over land.
That's what it was.
That's what it was.
Let's talk about a sonic boom and what it is.
Yeah. So a sonic boom is the sound an airplane makes while it's flying supersonic. You can think of it as kind of like the wake of a boat.
Okay.
You know, a boat's going sufficiently fast, it's going to make a wake. The wake's going to propagate outwards, and you notice it when it hits you. And so a big boats make a big wake, right? A small boat's going to make a smaller wake. The boat's right next to you, you're going to feel the wake more strongly than if it's further away. And a lot of that is the way sonic boom works. Big airplanes are going to make bigger sonic booms, but the further away they are, the less you hear. And then there's a distinction with booms that doesn't occur with wakes, which is they curve as they move. And they do that because there's a temperature gradient in the atmosphere. It's, of course, it's cold up high and it's warmer down low. That temperature gradient creates a speed of sound gradient. The speed of sound is higher the warmer it is,
Okay.
lower the cooler it is. And so the refraction happens. Whenever a wave moves through something where its speed changes, it turns in the direction of lower speed. So imagine like you're driving your car and your inside wheels are moving slower than your outside wheels. You're going to turn towards the inside. So that when light refracts, that's why. When sound refracts, that's why. And so the sonic boom, which is this sort of compressed air band that comes off the airplane when it's flying supersonic, makes, it turns as it goes through the sky. And so if it comes off the airplane at a sufficiently shallow angle and the airplane is sufficiently high, you've got this gigantic U in the sky. And if the bottom of the U never touches the ground, nobody hears any boom.
Gotcha.
And so this is the easy solution for sonic boom. For 50 years, people have talked about it like it's this boogeyman that's going to require, decades of R&D. Turns out this is a software solution. You just need today's weather data and an algorithm, and it tells you what speed and altitude to fly. And then there's no boom.
No kidding.
It's actually really simple.
Wow.
We could talk about why people have made it out to be a harder problem than it is.
Let's do it.
I think there is so like NASA, for example, has been working on sonic boom suppression for decades. And they've got this R&D airplane called the X-59 that they've been working on it for longer than Boom has existed as a company. And it hasn't flown yet. They're going about this with completely different physics. It's this very long, skinny airplane, which I think is part of why it hasn't flown yet. It's really hard to make that work. And the idea is if you stretch the airplane out, it kind of spreads the boom out across more time. And so when you hear it, it's quieter.
Okay.
And that thing can go up to Mach 1.4. Boomless tops out at about Mach 1.3, so they can go very slightly faster. But that's hard mode. Well, okay. Well, why do it on hard mode? Well, if it's not really hard, I don't think you can justify the research program. So I think there's this dynamic around some of these R&D type efforts where the incentive for the people working on them is to make the challenge sufficiently hard that it justifies the program.
Interesting. Just to start that company, you're going up against Boeing. You have the regulations, the speed regulations. What was the speed regulation?
It says thou shalt not exceed Mach 1, the speed of sound. It's a dumb regulation.
You've got some hurdles, and you have no background in aviation or aerospace. And how did you, when you, as the founder of the company, how did you, those are some major hurdles to get over.
Right? Well, I remember sitting in my basement thinking, okay, take my own ego out of this. Just imagine it's the year 2050.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm retired and I'm sitting on the beach sipping Mai Tais and I'm reading, aviation history. How do I think it goes? Do I think after 150 years of not doing supersonic, Boeing or Airbus finally do it? No, of course not. Like that history never goes that way. The big guys never suddenly get enlightened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, do I think we're still going subsonic? Sheesh, I hope not. Okay. So if we're not going subsonic and Boeing and Airbus didn't do it, how would it happen? And I just started imagining how that history would go, without me being part of it. Okay, it'd have to be an effort from outside the industry. Nobody who had spent their careers at Boeing or Airbus would ever do it because they'd have learned all the reasons why it's impossible. It'd have to be somebody from outside the industry. And what would the attributes of that effort have to look like? And what would the leaders of that effort have to look like? Well, you'd have to be incredibly passionate about the mission, because it would be long and hard. And if you didn't care about it and you were sane, you'd give up. So mission passion, mission orientation would matter. Being able to tell the story of why Supersonic would matter would be really important, because that would be the only way you could get a dream team together. And this would need a dream team. And so the ability to storytell, the ability to be persuasive, the ability to be a minnow that gets sharks to come swim with you. The startup would have to go get these airlines that are used to buying Boeing and Airbus airplanes to go buy airplanes from a startup instead. It would require this incredible power of persuasion, of perseverance. And so I put that aside and I looked in the mirror and I said, do I look like the CEO for this? And the answer was not at all. I didn't know anything about the industry. I don't think I could have sold you a dollar bill for 50 cents. And so I said, okay, well, and a lot of these things I was really insecure about. I was insecure about networking. I was insecure about sales. And I asked myself, well, what mattered more, my insecurity or my passion for this idea? And I said, okay, Blake, if you want to actually do this, you have to become that person. And I have to be willing to reinvent myself. And I have to do that continuously along the way. And so I sort of set out to become what my idea was of the right kind of leader for it.
Gotcha. Let's talk about, so it sounds like Concorde was the main inspiration, correct?
Well, it was an existence proof, right? Like in some ways, I think it requires way more courage to go off and create something of a category that's never existed before. Mm-hmm. And Concorde existed. In fact, it was done in the 1960s. It just wasn't done in a way that made it make any sense. Nobody could afford to fly on it. So it was sort of dead on arrival.
So this goes all the way back to the 60s?
Concorde was established as a joint venture between the French and British governments by treaty in 1962.
Wow.
And it first flew in 1969, within months of the moon landing.
Wow. Who was using it?
So British Airways and Air France were the only two airlines that really operated it for any length of time. And the tickets were adjusted for inflation north of $20,000. So this was really for the royalty and rock stars. Mm-hmm. Who could drop a whole lot of coin to go somewhere really fast. It was not practical the way it was done then.
How long did it run for?
27 years.
27
years, yeah. Shut down in 2003, really with no plan to replace it.
Why was it shut down?
So the proximal cause was it was just too expensive. At this point, the successor entity of the companies that had made it was Airbus. And the market was tiny. It had always been tiny for Concorde, and they were having to make spare parts and whatnot. And Air France wasn't making any money flying it. And so the story I've heard is that Air France and Airbus kind of got together and said, let's just stop doing spare parts for this, and then the British will have to stop flying it too, and it'll force the whole fleet down. So that happened. It was. I don't know if the conspiracy theory is exactly true, but I think the reality was it died. It was stillborn. This was an airplane with 100 seats on it, mind you, 100 uncomfortable seats. Like you could think they were out of back of Ryanair or something. Not a comfortable airplane. $20,000 ticket, 100 seats to fill. That just doesn't work. You can't find 100 people that want to drop 20 grand to go somewhere all at the same time. That's why they only ever had 14.
Interesting. So 100 seats, $20,000 a ticket, and then so it was actually the company that deep sixed it. It wasn't the regulations.
think it was not the company. The French and British governments suspected. So let's I think this is a big piece of kind of what went wrong in aerospace in the 1960s. So one of my controversial opinions is that Concorde killed supersonic flight. It never should have existed. And Apollo killed space exploration. And it also should not have gone to the moon in 1969. And a lot of people, and I loved Concorde and I loved Apollo, but I don't think they helped us. And if that seems like a crazy thing, just notice it's 2025 and we can't fly supersonic and we can't land on the moon. Mm-hmm. So these things that we were told in the 1960s were the harbingers of great progress didn't pan out the way it was predicted. So why? And I think the answer is that for the first 50 years, from the Wright brothers forward, innovation in aerospace was commercially driven. It was you building a commercial airplane that passengers got to be able to afford to fly on, that airlines want to operate profitably. Nobody build a machine unless they at least believed it was going to make economic sense. And then if you're building military machines, they had to make sense for that mission. And so there was a commercial hand saying it's got to make sense, or there's a military hand saying it's got to make sense. But either way, something's keeping us grounded. And in the 60s, we pivoted to Cold War era national prestige as the motivation. And so there was a Soviet project to create a supersonic airliner. There was a European project to create a supersonic airliner. And there was an American project to create a supersonic airliner called the SST. And in all three cases, they were government funded and they were government spec'd. And the result was everybody was building products that show technological superiority, not products that made any commercial sense. So Concorde and the Soviet airplane were very similar. The American airplane was going to be 300 seats in Mach 3. So it made even less economic sense than Concorde did. And then what happened is the American, so Congress pulled the plug appropriately on the American supersonic airplane. Concorde and Concordski were still coming. And now all of a sudden, it was not obvious back then just how economically dead on arrival Concorde was going to be. And so then America responded trying to protect Boeing by banning supersonic flight over land.
That's what it was.
That's what it was. This was
to protect Boeing?
This was protectionism. It was as long as Boeing's building a supersonic airplane, it was all fine. That project gets canceled, all of a sudden we can't have that sonic stuff. It's terrible. And I think the real tell was if it had been about sonic boom being bad, it would have been a noise limit, not a speed limit. Literally, it banned supersonic flight in the US.
Why would the government be protecting Boeing? No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.